You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
Right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. Your boy Pat Lane here, as always, with my guy Matt St. Jean. And this episode, as always, is brought to you by FanDuel, which is the official wagering partner of CLNS. And of course, you can go to FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up now. All right, the 53-man roster has been announced, the initial 53-man roster, because we know, and this is a guarantee, of course, this year, that the 53-man roster is going to look very different in just a few days, never mind a few weeks. And so, Matt, what were your initial takeaways when you were like, you know, of course, some news dropped, and we're like, whoa, a little surprising. What were the initial takeaways from you?
Well, I think when you go into making a roster projection, you always assume, all right, they're going to keep at least this many guys at this position and at least this many guys at this position. And you start doing math and you figure out, all right, here's our roster battles. Here's where everything is going to go. And every time we do that, we completely forget that Bill Belichick is a madman and he will absolutely keep the bare minimum at a position if he thinks the other guys suck. And that's kind of what I think we saw today, going light at some positions. And this was just, we're going by performance. And some guys have not played that well. And there's no reason to hang on to them if you don't think they're going to be good players. So depth chart looks a little bare in some spots right now. That won't be the case on September 10th. And I'm curious to see how the shuffling looks. Who goes on IR, who goes on, who gets cut. Right. I think quarterback and running back are the two that stand out the most there.
100%, right? 100%. You look at it and think, obviously, you can't roster a team. You can't field a team with one quarterback. You can't go into a game with two running backs. You can't do that, right? And so we understand that things are going to change, right? But it looks very different than what it will look like, again, going into week one against Philadelphia on September 10th. We're talking about a whole month from now. I mean, it's not even September yet. We got tons of time to figure things out. By the way, I might sound a little echoey. I am finally, after a very long summer, back home in my brand new finished basement. But the only thing is I'm the only thing down here in this brand new finished basement. So it's literally just me in this big echo chamber. So you may hear a little bit of an echo for the next week or two until we get some stuff in here.
We're all here to watch the Pats rebuilding, both the team and you.
That's right. Pretty soon I got my Marcus Jones jersey. Yeah, we'll see. So, I love it. But no. Anyways, I think that's where we start. Right, is at QB. Right, if we start at QB, obviously the news of Bailey Zappi gets released. Of course, then we thought maybe the way the news trickled out, we thought maybe Millie Cunningham will get the job. No, he gets cut too. Trace McSorley got cut yesterday, and so one quarterback on the active roster to start on the 53-man initial roster. And you look at it and think, that's crazy, and you can't keep one quarterback, and obviously we understand that. But when you take a closer look at it, I think Zappi really struggled in the preseason. And people say, it was a fourth-round pick from last year. You're going to give up on a fourth-round pick. You gave up on another fourth-round pick in Pierre Strong, blah, 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 whatever, right? We see these guys come out. But at the end of the day, Bailey Zappi's not getting signed by anyone. And even if he does get signed by someone, you're not losing a competent NFL starter. I think you saw what you're going to see from Bailey Zappi. And listen, he played well in spurts last year, I guess. But even the Bears game, people are like, oh, well, he had some throws. No, he didn't. He had Jacoby Myers wide open for a touchdown and threw a terrible pass that Myers somehow made a catch and turned it into a touchdown. And some of those other games, he's just running play action and guys are running wide open, right? He's not making these great throws, these great drives. So to me, look, I think Zappi can be a fine backup quarterback, but that's all he's going to be. And Malik Cunningham, for all the excitement that Malik Cunningham gave us in quarter 4 of game 1 of the preseason, realistically, no one is putting him on the active roster right now. It's just not happening. No
And
one's
if
doing that.
And if they want to, like it's especially when you look at what happened in the finale against Tennessee, the quarterback play was not good at any point. And you can
Right.
blame offensive line, you can blame not having weapons out there, but Zappy fumbled the ball 3 times. He had no ball security. His throws weren't on point. Malik Cunningham, I think it says a lot that they're not giving him these looks until the end of the game, and they're forcing it at receiver with him. They're trying to get him to be a receiver, and that's not working. So like, what? If somebody wants to roster one of those guys, like if that's the Bailey Zappi you were going to get as a backup to Mac Jones, you're not going to do that well. So why not see what else is out there? This isn't saying that they don't like Zappi, they don't think he can be something. He's not that good right now, and he's he's bad enough that you got to see what your other options are. Because if Mac's out for 2 games, they don't like their chances with Zappi. And Cunningham, he's not making the team as a receiver.
Right.
He's just not. And at quarterback, he's not there yet. I see the potential. I want to get him back in the building, but he's not there yet. And if somebody wants to take one of those 2 guys and say, we want them on our roster, we want to see what can happen, good luck. I hope those guys work out. I hope it works out, but it's not worth keeping guys around who aren't there yet. There's only so many spots.
100%, right? 100%. And Murph is in the chat here saying, Cunningham to the practice squad and sign Will Greer, right? Which I think is an interesting name too. Thad Skywalker mentions Carson Wentz and Colt McCoy, Shooter McGavin, 18 mentions Wentz as well. These are guys that aren't going to play anywhere else. They're guys that you can roster as your backup quarterback. I personally don't like Carson Wentz. I don't think you need him. But Colt McCoy is a guy that's been a backup in a lot of different places, can be a veteran in the room with Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Look, if Mac goes down, this is obviously assuming that Mac plays the way that we think he's going to play, or that some think he's going to play. If Mac goes down, you're screwed anyways. So it doesn't matter if it's Bailey Zappi or Malik Cunningham or Carson Wentz or Colt McCoy or Will Greer. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a precipitous drop off from there. That was going to happen anyways, even with Zappi as the backup quarterback. So, you move on, you figure it out. And if Zappi can come back on the practice squad, great. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't, right? And so they did say they released both those guys, but they were looking and hopeful that they'd get them back on the practice squad. Don't know if they will, but hopefully they will.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens out in Vegas, but Brian Hoyer is QB3 there, and he knows Bill O'Brien. If you want a guy who's just going to give you a professional in the room who can execute the bare bones of your offense, I don't hate the idea there. I think you want a veteran. I don't hate the idea of Will Greer, but he's a younger guy. I think you want an established veteran. And then Carson Wentz, I like it in theory in that he probably has the highest upside of any of the options we're talking about. But that also comes with a risk in that, if Mac is your guy, you don't necessarily want to bring in a guy with that pedigree who might try to make it a quarterback battle, and you don't know what he's going to say publicly. And if he doesn't get bought in, you don't want any locker room issues or splitting the locker room over the quarterback.
Right.
And I don't think we want a recreation of the fans yelling "Zappy, Zappy." Well, Mac's out there, but with Carson Wentz next year,
right? And I think
you're going to have a backup. It's got to be a guy who knows he's a backup,
right? And also, Carson Wentz stinks. If he's going to be, belly aching about being the backup quarterback and whatever, he's not good. We know he's not good. So, it's one thing if you bring in a guy that you think might be good, as your dad says, bring TB12 back. But, I'll
be there week 1.
So, but, it is what it is. Nathan Rourke, that's my guy. Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, it's a name I'd heard thrown around too. I don't know anything about him other than the name.
I mean, what a great friggin' throw that was. You kidding me? That throw alone should have got him on the at least on the roster, I thought. But anyways.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move away from quarterback. Obviously, we know Mac Jones is going to be the number 1. Who's going to be the backup? We don't know. Your guess is as good as my guess, is as good as Matt's guess, as good as anyone else's guess. It could be Brian Hoyer again. It could be Nick Foles. It could be Nathan Rourke. It could be Carson Wentz. It could be any of these guys. It could be some other guy that we don't even know. Could be me. You never know.
Yeah.
I do have a pretty good arm. My arm is all right. You know what I mean? I can sling it a bit. I'm not quite tall enough though to play the position. I don't believe. But anyways,
you can be the mobile quarterback.
Yeah, well, I'm not very mobile either, so I don't know how that's going to work, but nevertheless. So I think the next position is running back, and running back's another one where you look at it and say you can't fill the team with two running backs, right? You can't do that. We understand there's some roster shuffling that's going to go on, but it's just Ramondre and Zeke. Of course, they trade Pierre Strong yesterday, right? Yesterday for
Monday, yeah.
For Tyrone Wheatley.
Tyrone Wheatley, yeah.
Tyrone Wheatley Jr., which I think Tyrone Wheatley. I thought Tyrone Wheatley played for Bill, but I don't think he did. Anyways.
No, he didn't. There was another Wheatley that they drafted who played at one point, a corner.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought it was. I know Tyrone Wheatley played for the Giants, but he must have been there.
Oh,
after
know what?
Belichick.
You know what? I'm thinking in New England. They might. He might have played for Bill there.
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up. I should have done this before. See, look at this. This is terrible.
Great podcasting. Yeah.
Terrible podcasting, right? Let's say he was with the Giants from 95 to 98. No, Bill was already gone. So, but nevertheless, so he's got the genes, fine. So they trade Pierre Strong, they cut Kevin Harris, they cut Ty Montgomery, they cut J.J. Taylor, they cut C.J. Marable, they cut everyone, right? By the way, I said it. I will continue to say it about J.J. Taylor. J.J. Taylor is Bam Childers. He is. I'm sorry. Someone else can pick him up. And you said that, it sounded like he didn't want to come back. Fine. That's fine. In my opinion, he's shown in the regular season he can't get it done. That's my opinion. Some people might disagree. And maybe he will prove me wrong on that. And I hope he does, because he's worked his butt off to get where he is right now.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it from him in the regular season. I don't think he's the guy that they need. And so you have to assume that at least one of those guys will come back on the practice squad. I would think it'd probably be Kevin Harris. But then you say, well, they don't have a receiving back. That's why the Ty Montgomery thing is so strange, because you just assumed that Montgomery would be the guy because they needed a receiving back. But Zeke's a good receiver, and Ramondre is too. So maybe they figure those two can get the receiving done.
Well, and that's one of those where, the Zeke signing is interesting in that he's such a good short yardage back and pass blocking back that he can take a lot of the reps off of Ramondre and let Ramondre be a true offensive weapon on third down. And you could put two of them out there at the same time if you wanted and use Ramondre a little bit as a receiver. I don't know how often you'd actually do that, but he kind of allows Ramondre to be a third down back and a first down back at the same time.
True.
But yeah, it's just not a lot of, you get so much wear at running back. There's not a lot of bodies. We talked to, I think the last episode the two of us were on with Mike last week. I had mentioned, hey, what's going to go on at running back? None of these guys have distinguished themselves. Who's going to come out? How many are they going to keep? We assumed they were going to keep at least some of them, but this is one of those where it's we all watched the game and we've read the practice reports, and none of these guys had distinguished themselves, and maybe some of them come back. I don't think they're bad players, but there's nobody there where you're saying, hey, if we don't keep this guy, we're going to be worse if we have to grab somebody from the waiver wire. I think there's a lot of players there that are just kind of just a guy. And you swap out, Kevin Harris is a guy I could see back in New England or back on the practice squad or something like that, because that's what they did last year. Yeah. But he's fine.
I mean, that's the thing.
You can get fine in the running back market for, pennies on the dollar at any point in the season.
Right. Well, Thad Skywalker mentions Kareem Hunt, who's still a free agent. Interesting, right? Interesting. And so, I mean,
would they let him come to New England? I know he has a little bit of a sketchy history there. I don't know if Kraft would allow that one.
Maybe not. That's a good point. Maybe not. So we'll see. Also, I'd like to point out this. First of all, hello to Gary over in England, who's working the night shift as usual. Rod Dunn, bro. Who do you like? LOL. That's the quote. That's the quote of the night for me, man. That's it, bro. Usually I get yelled at for liking everyone and being too positive, and now Rod's saying I don't like anyone, and I love that. It makes me happy to see something like that. I do like a lot of players, sometimes too much. I fell in love with Trey Nixon. It's not great. I'm still holding out hope for my guy Trey Nixon.
He's still in the franchise.
That's true. That's right, baby.
Yeah.
So but for real though, it's no one in the running back room set themselves apart. Nobody made it so that the Patriots were like, oh yeah, that guy has to be on the roster. No one did. right? And maybe, right? Maybe Ty Montgomery comes back. Maybe Kevin Harris comes back on the practice squad. Maybe, who knows, right? But for right now, I'm not heartbroken that we lost any of these guys, right? I think Montgomery can be a player for them. I just don't know. I don't know. I just don't know what we're going to see.
And Montgomery's the kind of guy, like he hasn't been that productive because he can't stay on the field. And are you going to risk a roster spot on your 53 and lose one of these other guys for somebody who in 2 weeks might be on injured reserve because he tweaked something?
Right.
That's kind of how his career has been. And at some point, we're not going to build around somebody who you can't count on at all. And that's, I think, the story there. And this is the duality of Bill the GM. A lot of bad draft picks that we talked about here. 3 offensive guys already from last year we've talked about gone. Yeah. But the flip side of that is, you know what? None of these guys have really shown up. And, shame on Bill for drafting them, but good on Bill for getting rid of them and moving on and going to the next thing. There's no sense in just hanging on to somebody who goes, oh, well, we drafted them and we want to see. They're not good, move on and go to the next thing. You get a lot of draft picks and keep the good players and figure the rest out after.
Exactly. Also, Rod, don't apologize. Rod's in the comments apologizing. Do not apologize, sir. Okay, nothing to be sorry about. Thank you for listening. We appreciate that. I just think it's funny because people are always like, "You're way too positive," and I'm like, "Wow, look at this."
Unless it's JJ Taylor, apparently.
But yeah. So let's flip to tight end because there's a little tight end discussion going on in the chat as well about only keeping 2 tight ends. And tight end, I think, is the same exact conversation we just had at running back, right?
Yeah.
Did we think Matt Sokol was going to be tight end 3? Probably. But is anyone rushing to sign Matt Sokol? Like, no, of course not. So you can cut that guy and stick him on your practice squad. So he's a blocker, fine, right? And Murph said, that what's his name? That Tyrone Wheatley is going to be tight end 3 because he played tight end in college. But you're looking for, and I almost think, and I know they kept extra offensive line depth because of the injuries, but you can look at that offensive line. If you're just looking for a blocking tight end, well, just throw an extra tackle out there like they used to do for years, right? And so I understand, but like, I don't know. I'm not, again, I look at it and I'm like, there's no one that like I'm even halfway excited about, right? Maybe Johnny Lum could turn into something eventually, but like, I didn't see anything from him that I was like, oh my God, we got to keep that guy.
Yeah, and I think the story, one of the stories of camp at all 3 of the positions we've talked about here, quarterback, running back, tight end, was waiting for somebody down the depth chart to do something, and at all 3 nobody did. So why keep them? Right. And I think Sokol would probably Ferkser end up staying in the building here in the practice squad, and call him up when you need him. If Henry gets hurt or Gesicki gets hurt, you have an actual tight end body who you can promote when needed. Yep. But, if they leave, you can find another guy like that. Devin Asiasi just got cut. If you want to bring him back into the building and try that again, you can do it if you want to. Like there's plenty of guys who are just like that, who like you can, all right, we'll find somebody for him. Scotty Washington, like last year, coming in and like making plays in the game out of nowhere, setting up that Jacoby Myers touchdown. Like you can, tight end 3, you can scrape the bottom of the barrel and be fine. And I actually really like the idea of Terrence Whitley Jr. being kind of your tight end 3 and a blocker who can come in and do stuff. If you're trying to run the ball, I think that'll be good. And I think that's a better use of the roster spot than Sokol or Ferkser or any of the other guys who are on the street right now.
Yeah, I agree. So, and look, I don't think there's a ton to talk about at tight end. Like there just isn't. The guys weren't very good. They kept the 2 guys.
Everybody is who we thought they were.
Right. So there's no surprise here. And honestly, you have too many players at other positions that are important to look at it and say, we have to do this. It just doesn't, and Mike Larry, by the way, says tight ends aren't even signed for next year. He's right about that. Like they're both on 1-year deals, and I agree with that. And so maybe one of those guys gets extended, but that doesn't change the fact that the guys that were the depth pieces weren't good. So it's like you don't need to bring that guy on just because you don't have a guy signed for next year. You can worry about next year. That doesn't matter, you know. So
if you want to make sure you get somebody as good as Matt Sokol on next year's roster, I guarantee you can do that next year in free agency. That won't be an issue.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And I do think this highlights going into the draft. They're probably going to need to draft running back and tight end. Next draft, looking way ahead.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Simon, who's tuning in from New Zealand. Appreciate you tuning in, my friend. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I really didn't. I really didn't mean to do that. But I did pull up this happy as crappy. But that was not intentional. But I will say that's one of my best takes. When people were chanting Zappy, I flipped in the stands. I was so mad. I tweeted it out. People were like, "Oh, he sucks." Yeah. I'm like, "All right, dude. What do you want me to do?" So, oh, dude, Joe Judge. I would take Joe Judge's job in a second. That'd be great.
Should we do? So we talked about the spots. They have like no players. They have how many players? This is 5 players on the roster we've talked about.
Yeah.
And you get the wide receiver. They have 6, 7 if you count Slater. Offensive line they have 11 right now. Wild.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. I think the thing about 11 is that that some of those guys aren't going to be on the roster. You would assume that one of those guys gets cut. Maybe someone ends up on the IR for 4 weeks, right? And is out for a bit. So, there's no way that they're going to stay with 11 guys. You know what I mean? So it doesn't make any sense, right? And so, and that's the part of it for me. That's just like, all right, well, like they can't, but they don't have the depth, and guys are hurt. So like, maybe this guy goes to IR. Maybe they do this with this guy. Maybe so like you play the game. Riley Reef, I would assume, is going to IR, but he has to get through in the 53-man roster. He has to, and so if that's the case, you have to keep him on the 53, and it is what it is.
And then you make a move,
right? And then you make a move.
Yeah, and if we do some quick math here, like we know that they're going to add a quarterback at some point here. And it might not happen in week 1. They might, stash some guys in the practice squad, elevate them for week 1, figure it out from there.
Right.
But at some point, they're going to need a quarterback. At some point, they're going to need a running back. And when we haven't gotten to defense yet, but when Calvin Munson got cut, there was a lot of reporting immediately that was like, hey, he's coming back. He's a cut, but he's coming back.
Right.
Because he doesn't have to go through waivers and he's cheap. That's 3 spots. And that means, something's happening. You're finding 3 roster spots. I think the easiest spots to do that are wide receiver and offensive line, because Tyquan Thornton's banged up. Injured reserve gives you a spot. Riley Reef's banged up. Injured reserve gives you a spot. That gets you to 10. You can still cut a guy, and I wonder if they might cut one of the guys that they traded for on Monday.
Right. It's true. No, it's true. And that's,
a little city Foxborough flu, maybe.
Well, and so you don't know, right? Does another guy end up on the IR? Does an unexpected guy end up on the IR? Someone that we didn't expect to end up on the IR all of a sudden ends up on the IR. He's out for 4 weeks. Someone else jumps in, right? Is it going to be Tyquan Thornton, who we haven't talked about receivers yet? We'll get there. But for the offensive line, you need depth pieces. And you mentioned this. We talked off the air, Matt. You were mentioning one of the guys they traded for. There's a possibility maybe that we traded for one of those guys, and one of those guys ends up getting cut. You bring them both in, you give them a tryout. You see, you liked what you had from them pre-draft. You're like, hey, we like these guys. We like the potential they have. Let's see what they got. And then you bring them in, and you're like, this guy isn't good, and you cut him. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. And people say, well, you wasted a 6th-round pick. Well, no, you didn't. You gave up a 6th-round pick to get a guy you were probably going to claim on waivers anyways.
And you know who which 6th-round pick they gave up? They gave up the one they got from trading away Justin Herron. You're just, forwarding a tackle for another tackle later on, essentially. Even Pierre Strong, you look at what happened at running back, they clearly weren't going to be keeping him. So you get 2 free shots here to evaluate tackles. And the guys we're talking about here, Tyrone Wheatley, we mentioned, and Lowe from Minnesota, who came in. They're good athletes. They can do a lot. I think Wheatley's probably the better of the 2 right now. So Lowe, if I had to pick one of those 2 guys to not be on the team in 2 weeks, I think Lowe is probably the one. But yeah, the other thing we got here is good news today. I think when we're making our roster projections, nobody has Calvin Anderson on their projection. He comes off the NFI list today. He's back. We don't know exactly what happened, but he said, he's feeling better now. He's ready to go, and he said his career was in jeopardy, and now he's back playing with a little more heart in it a little bit after that, is I think what he said, something like that. Yeah. So you know what? That's one of the guys you signed, and now when healthy, and they're all working to come back. I don't know when we're seeing everybody, but Brown, Strange, Andrews, Onwenu, Calvin Anderson. Not a bad starting offensive line. And he gives you a couple tackles in City So, and then these guys to back them up. You got some guard backups in there. So you have backups across the board. You can keep 9 offensive linemen, maybe 10 offensive linemen, feel good about all the guys you have. It's feeling a lot better than we did on Friday or even, Monday when some of these trades came through. And Calvin Anderson's not the best, but if you're good at the other 4 spots, you can deal with having Calvin Anderson at right tackle. That's fine.
Exactly. And it's going to depend on, whether whether Cole Strange, right, and Mike Onwenu can come back healthy. If both those guys are healthy, then they're okay because they have the starting 4. That's the way it goes, right? And so we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? But if those guys are healthy, I feel good about it. If they're not healthy, then you're probably getting like a Tony Mafi, and I don't even know who on the right side. So that's the scary part for me if those guys are hurt. And so, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but I think it makes sense. And the right tackle position, and people are pissed about it, and I understand people are pissed about the right tackle position. But the thing to consider about the right tackle is that, excuse me, they took a bunch of shots at it. They took a shot at a veteran, Riley Reef, who had a decent year last year. Not great, but a decent year last year. They took a shot at a guy in Calvin Anderson who had traits that they liked, who showed promise. Not amazing, but showed promise. Everyone talks about the draft, and they say, they didn't go after this, they didn't do this, they didn't do this. The top 3 picks, I don't know how you can look at the top 3 picks and wish they had drafted anyone else. So now all we're looking at is Jake Andrews and beyond. There was 1 tackle taken between Jake Andrews and City So. 1. And that's DeJuan Jones. So that's the 1 guy that they didn't get a chance at taking because they took Jake Andrews. So you can disagree with the Jake Andrews pick all you want. That's fine. But I don't know. I like DeJuan Jones. I liked DeJuan Jones when we were, he was in one of the mock drafts that I went through and picked for the Patriots, and I liked them a lot. But, they like So at right tackle. They took him over all of the other tackles that were on the board. That's what they did. Yeah. And you can disagree with that, and that's okay, but that was the process for them, that they signed a few guys and they drafted a developmental guy that they feel like could be a tackle. And by the way, he hasn't been fantastic, but he's been pretty good at right tackle, I thought, when I saw him.
He's gotten better, I think, with each week, which is the big thing. And I think So, Mafi, and Andrews all give you regular backup level offensive line play right now from rookies, and I'm okay with that. I mean, you can live with that. And I think if you have an issue with what the Patriots did this offseason at tackle, I understand it. That's fair. If you wanted them to go after one of the high-priced guys, I get it. I prefer this strategy because I don't think the high-priced guys available were that much better than Riley Reef and Calvin Anderson and Connor McDermott. I don't think there's that big of a gap there, and I'd rather take 3 shots than take 1 shot when the guys aren't that different. But that's a totally different thing than being upset this week. These guys got injured. That's the issue. Connor McDermott's on injured reserve now. Riley Reef is probably headed that way with the fact that he got hurt on Friday. Calvin Anderson got hurt and he got sick and didn't practice until today. Cole Strange got hurt the first day of padded practices. Mike Onwenu got hurt last year and is working his way back from a surgery. Sometimes injuries just happen. That's the NFL, and you deal with it. I like the adjustment with the guys that they did pick up. And I also want to mention, Murph in here with the comment. If both of those guys, and Onwenu and Strange, are healthy, this is the best line in the AFC East. He is absolutely correct. go take a look at the lines that the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins have right now. They're not good. The Patriots, I don't love what the Patriots bring out right now. They probably have the best line in the East in a division stacked with defensive lines. And, Aaron Rodgers is not the most mobile guy in the world anymore at the age he is. Tua is not mobile, and he has his injury issues. So that makes me feel a lot better about the Pats than I do about the Jets or the Dolphins right now, just when it comes to protecting the quarterback. Mac's not the most mobile guy, but I don't think, and we saw him get injured last year, but I don't think he's as injury prone, or I don't know. I feel at least as good about protecting the quarterback as any team.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back. We're going to talk wide receiver, and then we'll flip over the defense. There's not a ton to talk about on the defense, guys. There's a little bit, obviously. We'll get into it, but there's not as much to talk about as the offense, obviously. So we'll get in a quick word from our sponsors, and we will be right back. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. 21 plus and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. Restrictions apply. Max bonus $50 unless specified otherwise. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Hope is here. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. All right, so we are back. So let's get to the wide receivers. Okay, let's get the wide receivers. And for the wideouts, no real surprise here, right? Of course, the 2 6th-round rookies make it, which going into training camp was a little bit of a surprise. But Pop Douglas looked great from the beginning, has been banged up a little bit, hasn't played quite as much. And then Kayshon Boutte has separated himself in these past few weeks, where you look at it and say, Kayshon Boutte deserves a role in this team. And I don't see how they would have cut any of these 6 guys. None of them would have made it to through waivers. And there was some chatter that people were calling about Kendrick Bourne, and the Patriots said, nope, not interested. He's not moving. He's sticking around, which I think is a great sign for their plans for him this year. Yeah,
I know this is something we talked about last week with Mike Cadlick. We were talking about, injuries and youngsters. He assumed I was talking about, wide receiver and the questions there. I kind of feel like there haven't been any questions about who's going to make the team at receiver for about 2 weeks now. I think you had 2 roster locks, a clear 1-2 punch in Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster. But a duo I'm really excited to see in week 1. I want to see how these guys play together. Kendrick Bourne has been great all camp. And I kind of think, once they got Kendrick Bourne to buy back in and change out the coach, I wasn't really thinking about a trade at all at that point, because we've seen him be a productive player then. Once he got him to buy in, I thought it was going to be fine. Demario Douglas earned his roster spot. Tyquan Thornton was going to at least make the 53-man. What happens from there, we don't know, but he's going to make it. And Kayshon Boutte, in the last 2-3 weeks, he's looked really good in camp. He's shown out. He got that touchdown in Green Bay. He played 1 series last week. He had his roster spot. And outside of that, Trey Nixon's hurt, unfortunately. Rowley Webb wasn't going to make this team as a receiver. I can tell you that much. Blake Cunningham was not going to make this team as a receiver. And it's Thyrick Pitts, who I thought looked good for a practice squad guy, but really had never had a shot at making this roster right now. So I thought this had a clear divide between the haves and the have-nots. And yeah, it's the guys you would expect. I just want to see them go out there and play now.
Right. Well, people say Shrew McGavin to that Booty is slow, and we've heard that Booty is slow. He doesn't look slow on the football field.
No, I have issues about, but like I don't know about his explosiveness, but speed's not really the issue for him now, especially because he looks healthier, and even his 40 time was fine. He's not a slow receiver, that's for sure.
Right. So, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but some of these guys don't need that. He just gets open. It's just really sick. It's really easy, right? So, so we'll see. I don't know.
And I think Booty is a pretty good receiver against zone too. That's what I've noticed. He's not always the best separator against man, but he has a real good sense of like how to throttle down and find holes in the zone. He's got good hands. He's hard to tackle after the catch. He's almost built like a running back. And I don't know how high his ceiling is. I don't know if he'll ever reach the athletic peak he had coming out of high school again. But I also don't think he needs to. I think he can be a very, very valuable possession receiver to mix in.
Agreed.
And I think the question here is if Tyquan Thornton's healthy. And that's the first question, if he's healthy. And then if he, like, what role does he play?
Right.
How do they balance it? Because Booty might be the odd man out for the active roster. I don't think they're the game day roster. I don't think they're going to. I think one of these guys will be inactive. It'll be Thornton or Booty. And I think that'll tell us a lot right there.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Well,
and I so to sum up the offense, we're going to get more running backs. Who knows who it's going to be? Probably Ty Montgomery, but who knows? We're going to get another wide receiver, another quarterback, but I have no idea who it's going to be. It could be any of the guys mentioned in the chat, from Colt McCoy to Tom Brady to Cam Newton to Will Grier. Yeah. Who knows, right? And then, at wide receiver, I think things are going to shake out. I think Tyquan's probably going to end up on the IR, which isn't great, but it just is what it is. And so we'll see what happens.
So, and I'll also note here, not all of that may happen by week 1. You go back, I think it was 2020 when they started the season with no kickers on the active roster. It just promoted from the practice squad for a little bit while they were figuring things out.
Right.
If Zappy ends up on the practice squad, then you might not see any movement, and they're just going to promote him from the practice squad for week 1, and we'll figure it out one week at a time. And that's at the end of the day, what matters is that you have enough guys in the building to do the reps, and that somebody can be a backup on game day. And it's also, we talked so much about the emergency QB thing, and if they were going to keep 3 QBs, and that all looks really silly right now.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right, let's flip over to the defense side of the ball. There's a lot on offense to talk about, and I know people want to talk about the offense more because there's a lot more question marks on the offensive side of the football. I totally understand that. I get it. I totally get it, right? Because, it's one of those things. I get it. People are upset about it. People want to, vent about it. People want to talk about, Bill did this or this guy did that or this guy's, not good or this guy, I understand that. But the defense is where we get over to the real talent on the team, the playmakers, the really solid players. And by the way, Zach Kuntz, did he get released by the Jets?
He must. I've heard that. I've seen that.
He must have, right? And so maybe, but I don't know, man. I look at it and I'm just like, I guess. But to claim a guy off waivers, you have to keep him on the active roster for 3 weeks, and I just don't think that they're going to sign a tight end to the active roster unless they love Zach Kuntz and then they go out and get him. Maybe, I guess, but like, I'd be surprised if they signed a guy to the active roster. For me, at least,
unless somebody becomes available that we didn't expect to be available.
True. Good point.
But even then, it's like, if you're trading for somebody and it's somebody who's worth making the move for, then they're probably better than Mike Gesicki or Hunter Henry, but we're even going to make that deal then. I don't know. You got 2 good tight ends. I think you just put some bodies somewhere at the back end and figure it out later.
Agreed. Thanks for watching from Arizona, Robert. Appreciate it. Going to feed his neighbor's horse. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Anyways, no real surprises on defense. I guess the 3 guys actually that I'll point out that made the team that were questionable. Defensive line, Sam Roberts. I mean, Sam Roberts, from the very beginning of training of the preseason, when he took that horrendous 15-yard penalty and then had another offsides penalty, I'm like, oh my God, dude. So
he had 2 15-yard penalties in there because he had a hands to the face.
That's right. So it was not a good outing by him, but he has just continuously played his butt off and looked like the guy that won the D2 Heisman, right? Whatever that award is called. He won the D2 Heisman, the same award that Kyle Duggar won. And then 2 linebackers, listed as linebackers at least, Penny Jennings and Mack Wilson. And Mack Wilson's a guy that he's not a perfect player. He's not great against the run. His reads aren't great, but he's an okay player. I know why they kept him.
He plays special teams too,
right?
Which is a factor. Which I swapped out. We saw Carl Davis didn't make the team. I swapped out Carl Davis for Sam Roberts in my last roster projection because I think we saw some really good play from Roberts and not from Davis. Mack Wilson over Calvin Munson, I think, was the shock to me because of how well Munson played in the preseason finale and how integral to special teams he's been.
Yeah.
But again, we heard that Munson's supposedly going to be coming back. So I don't know how to read that. I feel like that's a lot of linebackers to keep. I don't think you need Mapu, Wilson, and Chris Board and Calvin Munson all on the roster, but it seems like that's what they want to do.
I don't know. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me either. So, I mean, because if you look at it, you're looking at Bentley, Tavai, Mapu, Board, Mack Wilson, and Calvin Munson. That's 6 off-ball linebackers. 6. And obviously you have Judon, Penny Jennings, and Uche, but those guys are edge guys. But, why do you need 6 off-ball linebackers? And I get that Chris Board is going to be more of a special teams guy, but still.
And part of that's because if you're only carrying 2 tight ends and they're not really playing special teams, you get those bodies from the linebacker room.
Right.
But still, that's a lot. And I think the next guy you're going to talk about too is Sean Wade making it in the corner room, and I think it's fair. Sean Wade's improved from last year, but I think it's fair to look at this and say, hey, we're keeping Mack Wilson and Sean Wade. We might be making a spot for Calvin Munson to come back. That's obviously, you need your special teamers, and these guys have played well at points, but where do you get the depth for other spots? How do you balance this?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you really can't keep 9 linebackers on the team. And I understand they play a lot of linebackers. I get that. But you can't devote 16 players to your front 7. Your defense is too many. It's just too many on a 53-man roster. So, that's something.
Unless there's another move coming.
Which is possible, right? Maybe they trade Mack Wilson. Maybe something's going on with someone else. I don't know, right? Unless they look at Mapu and they say, no, he's going to be a safety, not a linebacker. Then again, you can 5 safeties, but safety. Whatever, right? Whatever.
5 safeties is something they've done. That's fine. You can live with that. But and it's somebody mentioned Ronnie Perkins too in the chat at some point. He had probably his best game in a Patriots uniform Friday night. I said it after the game, and I said it now. I think it was just too little, too late for him. Literally leaving it all out on the field. I'm assuming you saw that, Pat.
I sure did.
I would have liked to see him stick around in any other circumstance, but I think you needed a lot more of that earlier for this to actually change his. Well,
and I wonder if he's a guy that gets thrown in the practice squad because he showed some of that potential at the end. Which would be nice.
He'll land somewhere. He was a 3rd-round pick. He's an edge guy. Derek Rivers, I think, is still hanging around Houston right now as kind of a similar type guy in some ways, like a day 2 guy with Patriots drafted who just kind of hung around. If Perkins doesn't end up back in New England, he'll get claimed or signed somewhere, and I'm sure he'll get another shot. So I hope that works out for him. Just tough with the injuries for him. To have a redshirt first year anyway, because that's how it was going to be, and then miss your second year due to injury, and by then, Anthony Jennings broke out, and Uche broke out, and you just drafted Keon White, and Sam Roberts is rosterable, and there goes your roster spot.
Yeah, I agree, and that's one of those things. So we'll see what happens with him. Yeah. I think he was the only guy in that draft rated a 90 or above against the run in the pass. So, and that's PFF, but still, Yeah,
PFF loved him. I think he's good. The projection was always if he was going to be athletic enough to actually keep up that production at the next level, and it just hasn't stuck yet for him.
Yeah, agreed. Someone asked about the practice squad. How many players can be on the practice squad? That number is 16.
Yes.
16 players on the practice squad.
And I don't know off the top of my head, but it gets divided further based on how many years of experience you have. Like there's certain caps based on how many years you play and how many guys you can keep in each category. I'm going to be honest, it's kind of hard to explain. So your best bet for that's probably going to be just to Google it and try to figure it out yourself. Because I don't even think all the media guys know this. It's tough.
No,
I definitely don't, and it almost doesn't matter. Yeah.
So the two players, the two secondary players, and of course Jalen Mills gets kept as a safety, which I think makes a lot of sense. The two secondary players that I think probably deserve the most talk here would be, I think, at least Sean Wade and Amir Speed, right? And Murph mentioned Amir Speed.
Can I do some Amir Speed stuff here? Because I got some thoughts.
Do it.
Yeah. So I think Murph says I think Speed is here because Bolden got hurt. I do think he's here because somebody's hurt. I just don't think it's Isaiah Bolden. I think he's here because Cody Davis is on the pup list right now. Davis is a guy who's the personal protector on the punt team, the last line of defense before the punter. Fast, can make tackles, very good on special teams. Speed has that experience at the college level of being a special teamer for a long time in college. He's very athletic. And from the first preseason game, the Patriots gave him some of those looks of some of those important special teams looks on the punt team, I think is what matters because kickoffs matter less now. Punts still matter. And having a guy who's the last line of defense who you can trust to block for your punter and keep him clean while also being able to get down the field, get involved in plays and make tackles is important. And Speed showed his ability to do that from literally his first snaps. And I've actually kind of had him as a roster lock since about week 1, week 2 of the preseason because he was with the starters in a very important special teams role right off the bat and kind of came off the field early in that. And I think they made it clear that they felt he was a core guy there who could be very impactful. And I like it. Maybe he turns into something as a defender too. But in the graphic that they posted today, they have the colors for offense, defense, special teams. And, Matthew Slater, Brendan Schooler, Chris Board, and Amir Speed all had the special teams color with the kicker, punter, and long snapper. I think it tells you all you need to know.
Agreed.
And Murph mentions no undrafted free agent. No, the streak ends. I think Amir Speed is basically that. This is the kind of guy who you would have as an undrafted free agent, except you had 1 million picks. So you're just drafting him instead of picking him up later.
Right. And what's interesting about that is that this is the first year I can remember in a while, at least, that I don't think they did this last year, where outside of Isaiah Bolden, who obviously got hurt, they kept all of their draft picks. None of the guys got cut, right? None of the guys are going to end up on the practice squad. So for them to keep everyone is interesting, right? And again, they had a ton of picks, so they were drafting guys at the end. And so it's, I think it makes sense for what they did. I like the initial 53 for the most part. And here's one thing I'll say about Bill really quick, because we've gotten a few comments about Bill and that if Mac doesn't play well, Bill's job is in jeopardy, and that people are sick of Belichick, and I get all that. And people, he's 25 and 26 since Brady retired. I understand all of that, right? The Patriots are in the middle of a rebuild right now. I know you don't want to hear that. The Patriots are in the middle of a rebuild. That's where we're at right now. They're trying to rebuild their roster because they went all in with Tom Brady in 2018 and 2019. They won a Super Bowl in 2018. They were bounced out of the first round in 2019. And so because they went all in, because they spent a ton of money, because they spent draft capital on guys that A, either didn't work, or B, were guys at not super important positions, aka Sony Michel, which again, you draft Nick Chubb, whatever. We can talk about that, another time. But but the other thing for me is that I just look at it and say, we're rebuilding here, right? Yeah. And so it's one of those things, right? And Brady goes to Tampa and automatically wins the Super Bowl, and that's great. That team was nasty, and the amount of turnovers that They went 7-9 the year before Brady went there. I believe the number was 31. I believe Jameis Winston was responsible for 31 turnovers in
He was
2019.
in the 30-30 club, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. I know.
It's incredible. No, so then maybe the number was like 37. I think he had like 31 interceptions and 6 lost fumbles. It was outrageous how many turnovers. And they had 7 wins with him having almost 40 turnovers. So like think about how good that team was. Now you bring Brady in and they win the Super Bowl. Like they were ready to go. The Patriots were not. They had to pull a full reset. And again, you can blame Bill for that because he's the GM. That's okay. You can do that if you want. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to look at it and say they're rebuilding. They've done okay for a team that's rebuilding. They've done okay.
Well, and they had, they would go all in 2018, 2019, try to maximize the end of the Belichick era or the Brady era. Excuse me. And, wheels fall off midway through 2019. Injuries had quite a bit to do with that. And you always knew when Brady left that, you were kind of putting everything on a credit card. And it was all going to come due at some point with the way they were doing the contracts. And 2020 was the year you paid that off. That team wasn't good. It was never going to be good. That was kind of always the plan. You're going to have a reset year in there, and that's fine. That's the way it happens. I will take one reset year for the 6 Super Bowls that we won. That is a deal I can live with. And 2021, you draft a rookie quarterback, he starts right away, and you go to the playoffs. And then you kind of take a mulligan on last season with Matt Patricia, and I don't love taking a mulligan on year 2 of a rookie quarterback. Let's make that clear. That's essentially what happened with last year's team. And it's like, you look at the last 3 years, post Brady, one of them, they were never going to be competitive, and that was always part of the deal. I don't think you can count that against Bill, and they still finished 7-9. They weren't awful. Then they make the playoffs, and then last year, you can hold Bill responsible for the decisions that led them to where they were, but we can also kind of acknowledge that I think a lot of those decisions were isolated in that year and are unlikely to go forward from here. So, of the years where they've really been trying that since post Brady, there's really only been one where they've had everything in place the way they wanted it to, and they went to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. So, and the other thing is, even if Belichick loses his mind, I think he's earned the right to stay out there basically as long as he does, as long as the teams are somewhat competitive, which they still have been. They are 1 game out of the playoffs last year. They've been competitive every year since Brady left. So, yeah,
it's just, it is what it is. And that's, look, people are going to be upset, and there's things you can't please everyone. There's always going to be people upset. It just is what it is, right? And I think at a certain point, we just have to say, all right, let's just move on and kind of go from there. You know what I mean? And so that really is what it comes down to. At a certain point, you just have to look at it and say, like, all right, what do you want me to do?
And I've seen a certain degree of griping about Brady leaving and stuff. Maybe I'm too much of a Brady fan here, but like I actually have zero issue with how things ended between Brady and the Patriots. I mean, Tom Brady is a guy who has always said he's going to play until he couldn't anymore. Right. And his childhood hero is Joe Montana, the guy who played his whole career in San Francisco until he didn't, and he dabbled in Kansas City for a little bit. And Belichick has always been the guy who's going to let somebody go a year too early rather than a year too late. Like the tea leaves have been there since like 2007 that Brady was probably going to play for a team that wasn't New England at some point. And you look at the contract stuff in 2019, and it was, all right, well, if you want Brady back in 2020, the rest of the team's going to have to stink. A lot of that because they missed on a couple draft picks, but, you only got so much cap space. If you want to give it to Brady, the rest of the team's not going to be good. I'm fine with resetting. I'm very happy that Brady got his ring elsewhere. I think it was a situation that was amicable for everybody involved. The Patriots got their reset, got to move into the future with only one reset of the cap. Brady got to go play somewhere else, have fun, do things a little bit differently, and win a Super Bowl. I have no hard feelings about any of this.
Agreed. All right, let's be done. We've done a long show here. Do one thing.
We touched on Wade, but we didn't really mention it.
Yes, go ahead.
I do think this is, if we're talking about creating roster spots, there's one way to create a roster spot that we haven't talked about here, and that's if Jack Jones gets suspended, that creates an opening. If they think that's something that's going to be coming from the NFL, I don't know if it is. Shaun Wade makes a lot of sense. And even if you don't know, Shaun Wade's an outside corner. We don't want to repeat of last year where you have no bodies on the outside and Jack Jones gets suspended and, something happens to Christian Gonzalez or something happens to Jonathan Jones, two guys who are at practice right now but have gotten banged up in the last couple of weeks. I don't want Marcus Jones and Miles Bryant as my starting outside corners. Shaun Wade's bigger and can help there. He also plays slot. He also plays free safety. I don't know if he's that good, but he looked better in the preseason. You're still trying to figure out the future at safety. You're figuring out a lot about this defense. I don't mind keeping a guy who, can do a lot at a backup level.
Yeah, I agree. And showing the position flexibility is huge. The fact that he can play safety a little bit showed you he can play safety and is willing to play safety and can do it at a passable level, I think gives him a little bit more. And so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll kind of see where all that goes from there.
Light Engine mentioned if the NFL hasn't suspended him yet, they won't until his court case is over for Jack Jones. Very true. I think his next court date's mid-September. Without really knowing exactly what date any of this stuff is going to come down, it's good to have an insurance policy there on the roster. Wade knows the defense.
Maybe bleeds out. You never know.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. Do we want to briefly mention kicker too here, Nick Folk?
I was going to say, the fact that, the kicker and the punter, I think we all expected Chad Ryland and Bryce Behringer to be in the mix and to be their starters week one. But, you trade Nick Folk for a 2025 7th-round pick. I think it was the right move for the Patriots. I think they were ready to move on from Chad Ryland. The last thing you want for a rookie, in my opinion, the last thing you want for your rookie kicker is to be looking over his shoulder at a guy who has been doing it well for a long time and has been consistently good for you, because now you miss one kick and all of a sudden you're worried, right? And so that to me is one of those things where, like, I look at it and say, that's the right move.
Yeah, and I think somebody, I wish I could give credit here, and I don't remember who had it, had all of like the stats on kicks. This might have been Mark Daniels potentially, but no, I mean, Nick Folk has just been a worse kicker than Ryland percentage-wise in camp, and they drafted Ryland with the 4th. Ryland making the team was never in doubt. It was just if they were going to do the 2 kicker thing, and I don't know. I think the last week we could kind of figure out, okay, it's just going to be one, and you get something back for a guy in Folk who wasn't going to make the team anyway. So I will gladly take that, even though it's essentially nothing. A 7th-round pick 2 years out. That's as close to nothing as you can get back for a trade in the NFL, but it's better than literally nothing.
I know, and that's what. And Omema was asking if we think they could have gotten more for him. I think that was pretty much the going rate for kickers. And so, that's just kind of where it was,
And so, and I also think if we're sitting here talking about if you could have upgraded a 7th to a 6th with trading your backup kicker before the cut down deadline, like we're at the end of the episode. Like,
right. I agree. I do agree.
Yeah. That's you're not losing a whole lot there. And you get favor with players if you send somebody where they want to go anyway. So
Yes. So let's do the trivia question. Before we get to the trivia question, one thing I want to reach out to people and ask people if they would like to go in. I have about 30 spots left, so I want to see if people are interested. I'm doing it's actually a fundraiser that I'm doing, but it's Patriot squares. All right. And so what it is, you pay $50 for a square, and then it pays out at halftime and the final score of every game all year long. So you get 34 chances to win. I know Matt's got a square. I got 2 squares. So you get 34 chances to win. So if you want to reach out, if you want to do it, half of it's going to go to, I'm a teacher, half of it's going to go to my school, and half of it's going to go to the people. So again, 34 shots to win. I am going to rotate the numbers, so you'll get 5 different sets of numbers. So you want the same number all year. Like if you end up with 9-2, you're not going to end up with that all year long, which is nice. So anyways, if you're interested in that, reach out to me on Twitter. I'm is it X now? Whatever. It's just Twitter.
I'm calling it Twitter. Yeah.
It's at @plane_Pats is me on Twitter. My DMs are open if you're interested in a square. just shoot me a DM and say, hey, I'm interested in a square, and I'll message you back. So if you'd like to, great. And like I said, it's for a good cause for the school and whatnot, and it's fun. It's just like gives you something else to watch for when you're out there.
Yeah, definitely do that. And like you said, it goes to a good cause. So
yes. So all right, you got one trivia question here before we're out here?
And we'll do. Yeah, so the rules here, I think most people know now, but if anybody's coming in here now that we're getting close to the season, trivia question for us at the end of every episode. Every winner is going to be entered to win something from the Patriots Pro Shop. We're still figuring out what it is, but it'll be something good. We're not going to send you home with like a keychain. No, something substantial. We're going to do a couple of drawings this season. So every time you get a question right, you get an entry. That'll be the end of every episode, answers in the live stream, or you can message us or comment or whatever after. The question in the last episode, where is it here? Who has the Patriots record for most consecutive receptions made for touchdowns? The answer, Mike Vrabel with 8. Matt Mendino, congrats to him for getting that one. So that was a good one there.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Our trivia question for tonight, I got a couple here, but I'm going to go with a weird one, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a hint on it to at least narrow this down. But I liked this question. Here it is. An answer in the live stream right away if you got it. Who has the longest punt return in Patriots history that was not returned for a touchdown? And this is one I think a lot of you will remember when you get the name. But one not returned for a touchdown. I saw this one and remembered it. And the hint I'll give you, this did happen in the Brady era. This did happen while Brady was quarterback. So hopefully that narrows it down. I think somebody can get this one. I throw a guess out there if you aren't sure. Why not?
Ooh, good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. I saw some people in the chat, by the way, talking about not being able to message on Twitter because they're not Twitter Blue members, which is silly. Does Threads have direct messages? Do you know?
I have no idea. But what Ray just mentioned that. I'm going to open up I just sent him a quick message. Just so what Ray did, in case you're wondering, what Ray did was he sent me a message, a message on Twitter. Just tagged me in a message on Twitter, and then I DM'd him. I'm not a Twitter Blue member either, but for some reason I was able to DM. So you can start it that way too if you want to do that. If you're not able to send me a DM, do that, and we'll go from there. So
yeah, do that. So tag one of us in a tweet, and one of us will see it. And we'll
great.
We'll like to interact with you guys.
That was a great question, though. I like that question a lot. Anyone have it yet? No one has it yet, do they?
I'm not going to give that away. We'll let the answers keep coming in just for fun. We'll let people participate. If you want the answer, tune in. We'll give it in the next episode. Which I don't know when exactly it's going to be.
We're hoping later this week, but we're not 100% sure. We're waiting on a guest, so we'll see what happens, and we'll figure it out.
We're working through some scheduling stuff. There's that hurricane going on down south, which I think threw a wrench in some of our plans here with the guests. So we'll figure something out. We're gonna have a couple of previews coming down the pipe for you guys. The next, how many days until the season starts? We're under 2 weeks now.
We are under 2 weeks. Under 2 weeks away. I think we are at 12 days. I think because today's the 29th, right? Today's the 29th. So I think we're at 12 days.
And it'll be 11 days, and it's late, so we're basically.
That's a good point. Days. Good point. Yeah, might as well, right?
Yeah,
round it down.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you for listening. The chat. Thank you as always for being very involved. We really appreciate it. Love you guys, and we'll talk to you hopefully later this week. But if not, definitely next week. Take care, guys.